Hello, how's it going, guys? So I'll be posting this. I think it's like 1:30 in the morning now. So it is officially September 6th. Kind of a weird day. It's actually marks 14-year anniversary for me. For those of you that don't know what that anniversary is, it's kind of a weird one, kind of an odd point in my life. So rewind 14 years. In September, I was 22. Hadn't been feeling good since about my birthday, which is in July. You know, just could tell something was off, energy low, always sleepy, always cold, just really weird, which wasn't normal for me. And I put it off, and like a lot of people that are sick, you know, I just kind of was like, oh, you know, I'm just whatever, you know, nothing too serious, no big deal. But finally, on September 6th, Mom finally got me to go to the hospital, and it was unusual. You know, they took me back in the emergency room, and they said, okay, you know, the standard BS, let's do some blood work, see what we're working with, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so they drew blood. They went and did their thing with the blood, and, you know, weren't really in a big hurry or too worried about it. You know how emergency rooms are. Unless you're missing a limb or dying, they're not in too big a hurry. Well, so then they come back after they got the blood work back, and they asked me, they're like, you know, how'd you get to the hospital today? Well, you know, we drove down. And they were like, no, how'd you get in the building? I'm like, what do you mean, how'd I get in the building? I walked my happy ass in the building. You know, it seemed like a dumb question at the time. And so, I don't know, some more BS went on. I really don't remember a whole lot about it. You know, so the next thing I know, I'm up in the ICU at the hospital. And the doctors are all acting weird and being silly and carrying on. At least, you know, that's how I felt about it. And they came in and they said, well, you know, according to your blood work, your kidneys aren't working, which a lot of my family knows that I've had screwed up kidneys since I was 13. And I've taken medicine and seen doctors and done all kinds of crap ever since that age. And they told me way back then that someday they were going to give out. So that was always kind of always in the back of my mind. I knew someday, somewhere, my kidneys would stop working. Well, on this day, 14 years ago, that's the good news they had for me. That's the news they had for me. That, according to my blood work, my kidneys were done. Had been done for a while. I'd been running around with no kidney function. And they said, there's only one option at this point. We got to stick a bunch of hoses in you, and we got to do dialysis. Now, for anybody that knows anything about dialysis, like what I do now, I do 5 hours a day, 3 days a week. You know, that's how a lot of people do, is 3 days a week. And that's good enough. And they said at that time that they were going to, basically what they said was they were going to do what they could for me. They were going to try, which, again, it really didn't register me at the time. You know, I was pretty sick. I was kind of out of it. They'd given me some medicine and shit. You know, I really didn't pick up on what they meant by they were going to do what they could. They were going to try. But they started up doing dialysis on me. And they ran me for so many hours. And then they'd give me some blood. And then they'd run me again and give me some more blood. And this went on for a day or two or something like that. I mean, I was just, if I wasn't doing dialysis, I was doing blood transfusion. And it just kept going and kept going. And so after about 4 days in the ICU, I got to go to a normal hospital bed and, you know, get up, move around, and carry on, because anybody spending any time in the hospital knows 4 days in a hospital bed is 4 days too long. You know, it sucks. And so the hospital I was in had a floor in the hospital that was especially for what they called, it was called a renal floor. The only patients on that floor were patients with kidney problems or liver problems. And so the first day I was down there, my nurse for the day come in, and she looked at me and she said that she was kind of impressed to see how well I was doing. And I said, well, okay, what do you mean? And she said, well, she said she'd been a nurse at that point. This is 14 years ago. She may be retired at this point. She'd been a nurse for 25 years. And when she was looking over my chart and looking at my initial my blood work levels from the day I was admitted, she said, I've never seen anybody that was alive that had worse blood values than you. She said, you basically didn't have blood. You were just pumping toxic water around your system. I said, oh, that's awesome. That's fun to know. Pardon me. So I always kind of I've never done one of these kind of videos before talking about it, but it's always, every year on this day, I kind of just try to sit back and reflect on the stuff that happened that week, that I was basically in the hospital for a whole week, and kind of think about just how different it could be if I hadn't made it. I mean, it's kind of weird. A lot of people don't. I guess a lot of people don't get to kind of face down their own mortality that way. I guess is the way you could put it. And I've never talked to my mother directly about this. I've never asked her, because anybody that knows her knows she's kind of an emotional person. I don't want to bring that up. It's got to be probably one of the worst days of her life, I'm sure. And it sucks that she had to go through that, but I'm sure it's the same way for my dad. I haven't talked to him about it either. The only one I've ever really come out and talked to about it with is my sister. And finally, I guess about 8 years after the fact, I finally asked her one day. We were all out in Indiana visiting, and it was late one night. Mom and Dad were in bed, the kids were all asleep. We were outside smoking a cigarette. I asked her, I'm like, I was like, I don't know if I really want to know for sure. I was like, but I've always wondered, and I just got to know. What did Mom say that the doctors had told her when she called the rest of the family to talk to them about me being in the hospital that week, that first night? What did they actually say to her? Because I mean, the doctors took her out in the hallway and talked to her, and even as doped up as they had me, I could tell she was pretty upset. And I was curiosity got the best of me. I had to know what was said. And so I'm gonna share with you guys now what she, I kind of paraphrase what she told me that she got from the conversation that my mom had with the doctors. And basically how it boils down is they pretty well told her that they were going to do the dialysis and blood transfusions, and they were going to do what they could to make me comfortable, and they were going to do what they could, but basically to start planning a funeral, because I wouldn't survive the night. Which, even to this day, I don't like saying that. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's about as bad as it gets when the doctors say that, I wasn't going to walk out of that hospital. But by only what I can call a miracle. I mean, if you got a better word for it, please tell me, because I don't know what it is. 5 days later, I walked out of the hospital under my own power. Healthy. And yeah. So I mean, that's pretty much how it boils down. 14 years ago on this day, September 6th, a team of kidney specialists said I was dead man walking, that I wouldn't survive the night. Here I am 14 years later, still thumbing my nose at death. By, I don't know, I guess the grace of God is the only thing I can say. I don't want to be super preachy about it, but, I guess somebody up there liked me. And, thank God for that, because, since then, I've had 2 amazing children. I couldn't even imagine my life, back then I couldn't imagine life with kids. Now I can't imagine life without kids. They drive me crazy and they're wild, but I love every second of it. So I guess not to be too long and blah, blah, blah about everything, but yeah, I always like to take this one day in September and I kind of reflect on that time and how crazy it was and what could have happened, but thankfully didn't happen. And I know I give my family tons of grief. I'm still a big pain in the butt. They'll tell you firsthand. I don't do half the things I probably should do. I don't hold to my diet, my dialysis diet like I should. I eat things I shouldn't. I don't eat other things that I probably should. But, at the same time, I enjoy life. I'm not gonna, I guess I kind of get my attitude about that kind of stuff from my grandpa Bud. He was a man that he had diabetes, and he had diabetes pretty bad, but he never let that stop him from enjoying life. And he probably ate a whole lot of stuff that he shouldn't, that was bad for him in his diet in retrospective, but he enjoyed life. And so that's what I try to do. I try to always enjoy the things I can. Now, because of this, I guess you'd call it a disease, I could just call it a pain in the butt. This kidney problem that I have, I don't take, I used to drink a gallon of milk a day. Maybe now I drink a cup a week. I cut things back. They said don't eat bananas. Okay, fine, I can live without bananas, whatever. But I enjoy milk. So every now and then I have a little bit. I don't take it to excess. I don't drink a gallon a day like I used to, but I have a little bit now and then, because anything, be it diet, exercise, anything that tells you can't have anything of something makes it hard to stay to. So I indulge a little bit every now and then. And with the insanity that the world's going through right now, with all this COVID nonsense, it feels more relevant than ever to remind everybody to just enjoy what you can while you can. Because 14 years ago, I almost lost that chance to do that kind of stuff, to enjoy the things that I did enjoy. So I decided this year, being 14 years, to make this video and just kind of reflect on a few things and say a few words out loud about it finally. I don't know, maybe it'd be a little therapeutic to get it out instead of hold it in. Because a lot of people know I don't talk about this. I don't talk about my health a lot. People are always asking me, close family and close friends, always asking me, how you doing? How you feeling? How's this going? How's that going? And I'm just one of those people that don't talk about that kind of stuff much. I'm just, I know it drives my parents crazy because they always want to know everything, like parents do. I'm the same way with my kids. And, it's just, after 14 years, it's just business as usual for me. When I tell people that I'm on dialysis, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy! I can't believe that. Da 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 da. How's that?" I'm like, "Hey, it is what it is. I mean, it's one of those things. You do it or else." So, after 14 years, it's almost like getting up and going to a job every day. It's just something I got to do. So I do it. And it ain't all been a bed of roses. I mean, there's been bumps along the way. There's been this come up or that come up. As a side effect of the dialysis, I mean, what was it, 3 years ago? Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago. I can't even remember. That's how closely I keep track of this kind of stuff. 2 or 3 years ago, as a side effect of the dialysis and whatnot, I got the wonderful news that I got what they call it the big C word. I had parathyroid carcinoma, which is just a real fancy way of saying, oh, well, you've got cancer of the parathyroid gland, which, not to get all medical, but for those of you that don't know, you got the thyroid in your neck here, looks like a bow tie. And on that, you got 4 dots that are the parathyroids. Well, dialysis does some weird stuff to them. And at one point, they had done a surgery and took them out, and they put a piece in my arm, so that I still had some of the parathyroid hormone that your body needs. Well, all that messing around with them and the chemicals that they use during dialysis can cause cancer. It's not a common thing. I think the doctor that did my surgery said one out of every 100 dialysis patients develops this cancer. And of course, my parents heard the word cancer, and I guess they reacted like everybody does that hears the word cancer. Me, I was just like, okay, it's something else. Yippee for me. I get to be special once again. I'm one out of every 100 people that has it. I didn't feel, I kind of reacted to it the same way people react to the flu. Well, okay, whatever. What do we got to do to get rid of it? And, so they went in and did a surgery on my neck and did a surgery on my arm, took the glands out. And that was kind of the end of it. They did they did a bunch of scans on my head and everything, make sure it wasn't in my brain. I don't need any more brain damage. And, they thought maybe might have to have some radiation. Of course, I didn't. I had a good doctor. She got rid of all of it. Okay, good deal. See you next year type of thing. I went back for my checkups and this, that, and the other, and I was all clear. So, good enough. Let's move on. And so, it's one of those things. I feel like the last 14 years have taught me anything, that it's things can always be worse. And we never realize, I know a lot of us will hear somebody say, oh, this is so hard to go through, or something in their life is so hard to go through, and we look at them and say, that ain't hard, that's not a big deal. But it's all relative, because it's all about life experience up to that point. So when we hear somebody talking about something that they think is so hard, maybe to them, things have been a cakewalk up until that point, and that's the hardest thing they've ever been through. Now, in our perspective is that ain't nothing, but it's because we've had different life experiences. I catch myself doing it. I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, this was so tough," or oh, this is so rough in my life. And occasionally I'll think, you know, you want to hear something rough, let me tell you some stories. But then I'm like, you know, not everybody has this, I guess, a unique experience with different things like I've had. You know, I've spent more time in hospitals and doctors' offices and this, that, and the other in the last 14 years than most people spend in 50. But that's just my experience with that type of stuff. You know, not everybody who's had the problems I've had, they've gotten lucky where their body didn't betray them and try to kill them. Unfortunately, I have. So, you know, things are a little bit different in my book. And some people are like that. Some people have had nothing but tragedy in their life. So things that faze other people don't faze them, or soldiers that have come back from war that have seen terrible things. Look at somebody that's got anxiety or depression or just doesn't handle other things well, and they look at them and think that they're ridiculous because they've had a different life experience. You know, they've seen things that they'll never unsee, see things that they probably see in nightmares. And so they think that, you know, something that you're freaking out about because it is a big deal to you, they see it as just a silly little thing. But it seems in this day and age that we all have to be a little bit more understanding of each other because, I mean, let's face it, unless you were old enough to have lived through the pandemic of the early 1900 or early 20th century, I think was the last pandemic, you know, like the Spanish flu of the 20s or whatever that was the last worldwide pandemic. And I don't think there's too many of them still kicking around, unfortunately. So it's kind of, we're all kind of in a weird spot, you know. But, you know, like I said, I don't know. This is already getting to be a long video. And I didn't want it to be this long, because I know I get bored watching long YouTube videos, especially when it's just somebody sitting here talking. So, basically, this is just my more video for me. Kind of air out some stuff that I've never said out loud to very many people. So now I'm saying it out loud where anybody who wants to see it can see it. So that ought to be interesting. But, yeah, anyways, 14 years, still doing dialysis, still going as strong as I can. I still work part-time. You know, I try to do as much with my kids as I can. Because, you know, who knows? You know, I didn't think back then that I didn't think back then that when I walked into that hospital that day, I'd be as sick as I was. I thought it was something completely different. But it wasn't. It was what it was, and it is what it is, and, you know, I try not to dwell on it. You know, if you spend all your time worrying about being sick or when you're going to get sick again, which unfortunately as a dialysis patient inevitably is around the corner. You know, last spring is a good example. I was going strong, doing good, thought I was healthy, was just plugging right along. And then I got knocked clean flat on my ass. Some people know, some people don't. I had what's called a pleural infusion. Basically, I had pneumonia, and the pneumonia got outside of my lung and into my chest cavity. So I got to spend 20 exciting days in the hospital with a tube about as big around as my pinky hanging out the side of my chest, draining fluid out of my chest cavity so I could breathe. Because I had my right lung was almost smashed flat. And let me tell you, I've never been as scared as I was that day when I couldn't breathe. That is some scary shit right there. When you cannot catch your breath for hours on end, that is scary. That was probably the scariest I've ever been with something happening. You know, because that was just, not being able to breathe is no fun. You know, and, you know, imagine kind of the feeling, almost the feeling of drowning, but you're not in water. That's kind of how it felt, really. So, yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. You know, that was a whole lot of fun. So, I guess I'm gonna try to wrap it up here. But anyways, yeah, this is kind of my way of showing or telling you guys, anybody that watched any of this or all of this or even a part of this, if you see this last bit here, if anything, I guess if you spend all your time worrying about something that's going to happen, whether it happens or not, you suffer. You know, and I try to tell my mom this as much as I can, because she's a worrier. She worries about everything, which isn't necessarily a bad trait to have. But when it gets to the point of having anxiety of stuff happening, you know, if it's something you can control, worry about it, do something about it. But like this pandemic, there's not really a whole lot we can do about it. You know, it's not like one person worrying about it is going to stop it, going to curve it, going to do anything about it. It's just going to do what it's going to do. It's like spending all your time worrying about whether or not a tornado is going to hit your house, to the point you worry yourself sick. Well, if it doesn't happen, you still tortured yourself about the what if. And then if it does happen, well, then you've suffered twice. And that's my whole thing. If you spend all your time worrying about something and it never happens, then you've missed out on all the good things that you could have been doing with your time and energy worrying about that thing. But on the off chance that it does happen and you've spent months or years worrying about it, well, you've suffered all the way up to that point about it, and then you're going to suffer through it. So then you're suffering twice. And then chances are you're going to worry about it happening again afterwards, so you're going to suffer a third time. You know, so you got to pick your battles. You know, worry about the things that you can control, and then do something, you know, not so much worry about them, but be aware of them. You know, understand first off between the things you can control and the things you can't control. Okay? And if it's not something you can control in any way, shape, or form, don't worry about it, because you have no control over it. So it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, but you have no control over whether it does or doesn't happen. If it's something you can control, spend your time fixing it or stopping it or controlling it, rather than worrying about worrying about that thing and what could be done about it. You know, that time and energy could be so much better spent. You know, so that's kind of the gist of my story here. You know, I never worry about what's going to happen to me next or when it's going to happen to me next, because, you know, then if I'm worrying about, oh, if I do this, something might happen, or if I don't do this, something might happen, or if I don't eat just the right way, I might get sick, or if I don't do, you know, it ain't worth it. You know, I've got time that would be better spent playing with my kids outside, going to watch my boy play football, going to watch my girl when she starts gymnastics, do gymnastics, going fishing. You know, just being out in nature is so therapeutic. Even if you don't like to fish and you don't like to hunt, just go out and listen to the woods. Go to the river and listen to the river. Go to the creek and listen to the creek. you know, just get outside your own head for 2 seconds and just watch the world around you, because it is a beautiful thing. So, you know, this, everything that's going on is just, I know it's no fun, but, you know, hell. Anyways, so I guess I'm gonna probably call it a day here. You know, I'm gonna post this video later today on September 6th. It's kind of just a anniversary video, more for myself to get some things out, get them off my chest, because they rattle around in the old brain this time of year. You know, this time of year, the what ifs kind of sneak up on me. You know, what if I hadn't, you know, I don't know, call it, if I hadn't gotten lucky, or somebody upstairs didn't like me as much as they did, or, you know, the doctors hadn't been quite as good as they were. You can spin it 100 different ways. You know, I like to think that somebody upstairs likes me, you know, because no matter how sick I've gotten, and I've gotten pretty there a couple times, more so than I thought I was, until I take a step back after the fact to look and be like, yeah, that was kind of stupid. I was about there. So, I don't know. But, you know, we're more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, and we'll, ow, that hurt. We'll make it. So, just, yeah. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling. I didn't have anything set in stone when I sat down to make this video. I was just kind of gonna talk about the 14-year anniversary of finding out that I had kidney failure, and the kind of craziness that's gone on. And I haven't even touched on but a couple of things that has happened in the last 14 years. There's 100 different things I could talk about, and this video would be ungodly long and boring, more boring than it already is. But anyways, so I'm just gonna call it a wrap at that. If you watched all the way through, thanks, love you for it. If not, you won't see this, but so, I mean, I could sit down and I could tell you guys 100 different stories about different things that have happened. And maybe I will eventually. Maybe I'll tell some more different things like this. I mean, I don't know if anybody even wants to hear this kind of stuff. It's kind of depressing, I think, but